Hi, and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast for athletes, coaches, and professionals who want to achieve their goals faster. I'm David Charlton, and I'll be sharing proven methods from leading athletes, coaches, and experts that will help you get the most from your talent. Today's show is sponsored by Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support, and excellent rehabilitation services. Today's guest is Steve Judge, an international professional speaker, author, and former two-times world para-triathlete. It's fantastic to have you on the show today, Steve.
It's lovely to be here, David. I'm really excited about this, getting to share with you my story, my journey, my inspiration, but also to all your listeners as well. I love inspiring and motivating, so it gives me a great opportunity. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
And thank you for the opportunity to learn more about you and your inspirational story. I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm sure the listeners will be hooked.
It's going to be good. And I know you've got some questions lined up to guide me. And I think that's always interesting. I tell my story a lot, and it gets into the point where I almost give the same keynote. So somebody can ask me curveball questions. That's always good, because then we cover a little bit different part of the story. And that's interesting for me, and it will be very interesting for your listeners today.
Excellent. Some listeners may not be aware of who you are. Would you like to introduce yourself and let them know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's from your introduction that gives a little bit away. But my title, my introduction is goes quite a long way. But let me just take you back to I never know how far back to go. But when I was a kid, I loved things like running. That was my thing. Sport, any kind of sport, I really thrived in. So that was my real joy, my real passion. When I left school, I became an engineer, and I used to work down the coal pits of Yorkshire as a mechanical engineer, maintenance fitter. So I was responsible for fixing up the machines down the coal pits. So if they went wrong, I had to go down and fix them. And you couldn't lean on excuses then. You had to get the machine fixed. They was at the coal face. So I was given a problem, and I had to find the solution. That's what engineers do. You have to be ingenious with those ideas as well. Going forward, I carried on with my running to my young adult years. I got worked in a laboratory as well. We're traveling a little bit around the world. But that takes us all the way up to 2002, I guess. And that's when I had a massive adversity in my life that changed it in a big way. I was driving down the outskirts of Sheffield, and there's a lot of rain on the road, so the roads were a little bit skiddy, and my car skidded, and it spun, and it crashed into a pole, and that crash bent the car in half, and within that crash, both my legs got crushed. So stuck in that mangle of metal, I couldn't get out, and it was a horrible feeling for me. Everybody coming to save me, the paramedics, the ambulance, the police, the fire brigade. It took them about over an hour to cut the car apart piece by piece, and eventually drag me and my legs out of the car into a nearby waiting ambulance. That mercy dashed me to the nearest hospital, the Northern General Hospital in Sheffield, where they pretty much, they saved my legs, but more than that, they saved my life. And it was very, very traumatic time. My mum, my brother, my sister were called, and they were told that they might not see me again. They didn't know whether I was going to survive the operation, but I clearly did. And 8 hours later, I was awake in the hospital bed, but looking down at my legs, which had both been trashed, is hard hitting. And it was around that time when my surgeon came round, and he told me that the operation had been successful, but because of the severity of my injuries on both my legs, there's a high possibility that I may never walk again. And I think when somebody gives you information like that, it's very much a fight or flight. And the flight being, I could just roll over in bed and just give in. And the opposite being, I can remember being really angry and furious that somebody had the audacity to say that to me. I guess that's the fight inside me. I don't like it when people tell me that I can't do things. When you have something so special, something that you take for granted, like walking and standing and walking, to have that taken away from you, to have that stolen from you, it's a horrible feeling. And at that point, I realized that I was ready to fight. And I say that because deep inside I did, but I had absolutely zero energy. And my legs were trash. I'll try and explain, but my left leg had been ripped apart at the knee. So the 4 ligaments that hold your knee together, like the big rubber bands, they'd been ripped out. My right leg had been partially amputated. What that means is that in my calf, in the bottom bone, the tibia bone, 4 inches of that had been knocked out and thrown away. So they seized it together and put a big metal cage around it. But my leg was literally 4 inches shorter than my left leg. A massive difference. So I was told it was going to be my responsibility to twist nuts and bolts in this cage, slowly stretch my leg out a millimetre a day over the course of about 100 days to get it to the right length. That's what I had to do. And I was just like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. And they said, well, it's not usually recommended. We usually recommend only 2 inches, but, yours is 4 inches. So, do your best kind of thing. Now, doing all of that, going through the rehabilitation, getting my leg to the right length was hard enough. But then there were consequences on that. Even when the leg was the right length, there was a gap in my bone. There was no bone. It's very hard to get that across to people, even to myself. If you did an x-ray, there was just a black gap where there was no bone. Now, there was a calcium line, and and I said, how do I grow the bone back? I was thinking you just drank lots of milk or ate lots of cheese to grow bone. And they said, no, Mr. Judge, what you're going to do is you've got to start using your leg. That will encourage the bone to grow back. I said, well, like what? I said, well, you've got to stand on it. You've got to walk on it. I'm like, but there's no bone in it. What do you mean? And they said, well, you've got to trust the cage. The cage is holding it all together. Trust the cage, stand on it, walk on it, and the bone will grow back. And again, that's a massive mind over matter thing to do, to stand up, to put weight through your leg, even though you've got no bone in it, pushing the weight through the pins in your leg, seeing the blood trickle down your leg as you're putting your effort in, the pain, going to the pain and everything. It was really hard. But there were even more consequences because I'd stretched out my whole leg. Everything was tight. All my tendons had shrunk in a way, and then I stretched them out. So everything was really, really tight. So imagine my right foot, my toes were really clawed because if you touch the bottom of my foot, that was just so painful. I'd go through the ceiling. But more than that, I couldn't get a straight leg. So my right leg was bent because the tendons were so tight. Now, I was dealing with other things in my rehabilitation, the left leg, the right leg, growing it and everything. And when I went to the hospital once, they said, Mr. Judge, your right leg, can you straighten your right leg? And I said, oh, not very well. And they went, right, you really need to get that straight, because if you don't get your leg straight, you can't weight bear on it properly. In fact, if you walk on it, you'll be walking with a limp for the rest of your life if you don't get your right leg straight. You think, are you kidding me? I thought the big thing was get my leg to the right length, to grow the bone back, to get the toes right. Now you're telling me I've got to get my knees straight. There's always like something else and something else. But that's what I had to do, working on how to get my legs straight.
Now, I imagine as well, you're going through a complete emotional roller coaster during that period of time as well, and you would have to deal with that.
Do you know what? It was hard. It was tough times. I was looking at my diary and recently, and there was about a month. There was an entry a month later after the accident that said, "Look, today's been a good day because it's the first day I haven't cried." I cried every day, and I cried with the question going round in my head: why me? Why me? Why is it happening to me? There was clearly no answer to that. But there's some really down days. People are going through down days at the moment with coronavirus. I feel you're on a bit of a tightrope. Sometimes the slightest thing that's negative in your life at the moment, you could just fall off that tightrope and it's all doom and gloom. I was like that for month in, month out, doing my rehabilitation. I was absolutely so committed and doing the rehabilitation because I had my goal of standing and walking again. But my mental health really did suffer. And especially when you get knocked down all the time, there's always something else and something else and something else. You're like, oh, just give me a break. This is crazy. I was finding it hard enough just to sleep, let alone do all the inflicting pain on myself. Getting my right leg straight, the only thing I could do was sit on the floor and push down on my knee, trying to get it straight. And I'd do warming up exercises. I'd push down, I'd hold it down. Do you know what the first thing I did when they said I'm going to get my leg straight? First thing I did as an engineer was I went and bought myself a protractor so I could measure it. Benchmarking is always so important. You want to set a goal, benchmark it. So I measured the angle of my knee, saw how bad it was, took a photo of it, then started the physio. day in, day out, pushing down on this leg, doing sessions, did about 3 sessions a day. And I started doing a graph as well, doing a chart. I remember, going to the physio and they said, "How are you getting on with your leg, Mr. Judge?" I said, "Oh, I'll show you. I've got a graph. Look at this. It's like an Excel spreadsheet." They go, "Wow." The thing is, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. I needed to see the progress that I was making. And after 3 months of doing extreme physio, sometimes I was doing more physio than I should have done, which did not work. But I was trying anything and everything. After 3 months of doing this physio, the results were that it hadn't worked. My leg was still bent. It was a horrible situation to be in. The fact that I'd done all this time and effort, I couldn't do anymore. And I was out. I was out of ideas. And what I had to do was, ask for help. But before that, because I was in such a low pain, and we were talking about this before we started the podcast, I was probably at the rock bottom. When we talk about the wave of resilience, we're talking about like some adversity hitting you. You have the shock and denial. You have the anger that brings you down. You have the sharing, which is the moaning part, really. The rock bottom is when you can't get any lower. And I stopped doing my physio. I started sulking. I started not washing, not shaving. I was just a waste of space, really. And I can remember lying on the sofa, looking at all my physio equipment that was untouched. I remember looking at my charts, my Excel spreadsheet that had been not entered because I'd given up, I'd given in. And I looked around and I just thought, I don't want to be this person that I've become. And this is not a contradiction, but I'm always talking about setting goals and working towards them. And I think you should always do that. But there's going to be tough times in your life when you just need to realize that you don't want to be where you are now. Just forget about the goals in the future or anything. Just move away. Just do something that is not what you're doing now. And that's where I was. I just knew that I needed to move from where I was. And so what I needed to do was to ask for help. And this is what a lot of people, we all say it. And I think us men are probably the worst at it, that we don't ask for help enough. But that's what you need to do. And there's a lot of people out there that want to help you. My help was from the hospital. I asked them for the help. I said, "I can't get my knee straight." They said, "We can help you." I said, "Good." They said, "You might not like it though." I said, "Go on then. What are you going to do?" And their answer was to fix another cage to my leg, on the top part of my leg as well as the bottom part of my leg. They then put nuts and bolts between the two and straightened it a little bit. They then gave me a set of spanners to go home with, and over the next 7 weeks, I had to twist those bolts day after day after day, slowly straightening my leg bit by bit by bit. It was absolutely hell on earth. It was the worst time ever. I couldn't sleep properly. I couldn't do any physio. I was crying with tears. I could see the blood coming out of the pins. It was just so hard. But I must admit, after 7 weeks, my leg was getting straighter and straighter, and that's what I needed to do to get to my goal. One, needed to ask for the help, but also go for that extra mile, go for that extra pain to get me to what I needed to do. Now, once after 7 weeks, the top cage was taken off, and I could go back to my physio and continue with that. But I just needed to get over that hump of the hill, and I managed that by asking for help.
So after that big down period you talked about there, and then your recovery, did you go back to setting your charts and doing your little goal setting there to help you, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the goal setting always, the Excel spreadsheet is. I still got the chart, and it's kind of like a zigzaggy line going slowly up. Then the double cage was fixed, and so the chart goes straight up. My leg went very straight. Then the cage came off, and it goes back to zigzaggy. But I absolutely carried it on. Carried on taking the photos. Carried on seeing what I could do physically. And eventually, with all my hard work and the rehabilitation, after a year and a half, the cage was eventually removed. My leg was straight. The bone had grown back, and I was able to stand again and walk again. But the thing is, my goal was also been to very much about getting back to normal. And I realised at this stage that I was very different to what I was before the accident. So my left leg and my right leg both have got lack of feeling below them. They've got lack of movement, lack of sensitivity. And yes, much as I could stand and walk, I was also in a lot of pain, especially my right ankle. But, that's as good as I could get. I couldn't have done any more. But my message is always to the schools and to even, CEOs, managing out, to stop comparing yourself to others, because there is no such thing as normal. Everybody's different. Don't compare yourself to your friends, your family, to celebrities. Everybody's different. It's about working out what you can do rather than what you can't do. So I started thinking about what I could do. I got into sport. Sport was a really good thing for me. I couldn't run anymore, but I could swim. I could cycle. I could set myself goals and challenges and push myself out into my comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, into doing more things. I wanted to prove that the accident hadn't had a detrimental effect on my life. So I was willing to grab any opportunity that there was. And I was looking around and I was looking for a new opportunity. This was about 2009. And I found this thing called a triathlon, swimming, cycling and running. Now I couldn't run, but, I now had a goal. And I thought, well, maybe I could try and run, even with my disabled legs. I remember I was looking through Google. I was looking for new challenges. I found this thing called a para-triathlon. That's triathlon for disabled people. I thought, well, that's brilliant. I think, am I disabled? Can I do that? Can I compete in that? And going down and them assessing me, giving me lots of exercises. And after the assessment, they said, Mr. Judge, you are disabled. And I'm like, wow, this is great. This is good news. Because now it opens the door for me to compete as a disabled athlete. And so my training started, up the level into swimming and cycling, running. If I went for a run, I was in so much pain, I couldn't run the next day. So I swam. After that, the day after, I was still in pain, so I couldn't run, but I cycled. And the day after that, the pain had gone. So I ran again because I loved to run. I was always thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. I took part in the British Championships in my first year in 2009. And in my category, I won. This is amazing. Not only to complete a triathlon, which is amazing in itself, but because it was the British Championships, the officials then came up to me and said, Mr. Judge, would you like to represent Great Britain? And I'm like, hell yeah, I would love to represent Great Britain. So again, it's about those opportunities that are out there, grabbing them, doing something with them. And so that's what I did. I started setting myself new goals for the European Championships and eventually the World Championships, which I competed in 2011, crossing the finish line to become champion of the world in power triathlon. An amazing accolade to go from where I was to where I was then, as world champion. Amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement. You should be really proud of yourself. But I believe, so after you completed the first World Championship, you then had an Italian rival who caused you a few headaches along the way.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell me about that story?
Well, the thing is, when you're world champion, everybody wants to beat you. So, you're all eyes on Steve Judge. And it's the European Championships the next year, 2012. And there's a new competitor, an Italian competitor, and nobody really knew much about him. To cut a long story short, in the European Championships, he beat me, but not only by just beating me, he beat me by 4 minutes. Now, that's a lot of time. Our race takes about 1 hour 15, 1 hour 20 minutes. To beat him by 4, I couldn't even see him in front of me. And I suddenly realised in 6 months' time, there's no way that I could get 4 minutes quicker. There's no way I could get the gold medal in the World Championships. And so I was going to have to rethink my goals and settle for silver medal. My goal would now be the silver medal or even the bronze medal or podium. That's what my goal would be, and that's what I would work towards. And then I realised what I was doing, as I was leaning on my excuses, and therefore I needed to turn my excuses into challenges. So how do I do that? So I had to change what I was saying to myself and say, right, Steve, in 6 months' time, you've got to be 4 minutes quicker. I'm like, well, how do I do that then, Steve? It's like, well, you've got to come up with some ideas, a bit like being an engineer. You've got a problem, find the solution. So the swimming, I couldn't get much faster in that, but I could get more efficient. The cycling, I could do a lot more on that, more time in the saddle. Definitely the running, I could get faster on the run. That's why I could beat the Italian. But it's always about thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. I suddenly realised also that it wasn't just about being fast and strong, which is quite bizarre as an athlete. But I realised that some of my friends weren't even getting to the start line because they were injured. Now, it's mental health week. It was a wellness week this week, and wellness is a big part of being an athlete. You've got to look after yourself. So I had to invest more time, and time was really strict already. I had a full-time job, I had a family with 2 kids, I've been swimming, cycling, running, and now I'm spending more time on my wellness. I started doing warming up, warming down a lot more. I started doing yoga, Tai Chi, started doing visualization, started doing some meditation, anything so that I would not get injured. Injury prevention, oh my God, it's the most boring thing ever. Injury prevention, but because it doesn't make you stronger or faster, but it makes you not injured. So you don't really see the results. You almost take it for granted. But I was getting to the start line every single time. And that was the main thing. You've got to be in it to win it. It's the same in business. If you can't get to work, you can't work. So I was doing all of this. This takes us up to 2012. The Italian was there. I was there. The race starts off. We do the swim section. He swims like a fish. He just like disappears. That's his thing. He's a Paralympian swimmer. We get out of the swim onto the bike. He's off. He's still ahead of me, about 4 minutes ahead. I'm chasing him. We're about equal on the bike. It's very hard to see him because it's just like just holding on to dear life, to be honest. Come off the bike, we're at the bike. He's still in first place. I'm chasing him now. We're out in New Zealand, so the crowds are going crazy. And eventually, this is where I'm going to catch him up. Eventually, I'm looking out for him. And my goal was to get eyes on the prize. If I could see the Italian ahead of me, I knew I could catch him. And I knew that if I could catch him, I could take him. And eventually, I saw him up ahead of me in his blue outfit. I get catching up to him bit by bit, and he's pulling away from me. We're going round the corners of the course. Everybody's going crazy. And then we're coming round to the final 100-meter sprint into the finish line. And I just pushed at everything. So that I was completely exhausted. That was another philosophy of mine, was to leave it all out there. So I crossed the line with absolutely nothing left. And I blitzed it and I crossed the finish line. And on that day, I grabbed the gold medal. And I beat the Italian, but I also became world champion for the second time running. And it was such an amazing offload, such an amazing achievement and accolade to stand there and see, the flag being raised with the national anthem being played. But I did that. I could have easily leaned on my excuses for those 6 months, but I didn't. I raised that as a challenge and I pushed myself forward and I achieved. And that's one of the main messages that I give out.
Yeah, I've noticed your little phrase there about leaning on your excuses there. You've used it a few times. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, because it works, because a lot of people lean on excuses. So it is, I guess people always like to have their own phrase. And I think that's become my phrase because it suits my story so much. And that's what I talk about as a motivational speaker. And as a speaker, a lot of people say, Steve, that's a great story. When you're on the stage, you're telling it, so much excitement, energy. Do you have a book? Have you got an autobiography? And I say, oh, no, I haven't got a story. I haven't got a book. I know, you haven't got a book? I go, no, I haven't got a book. Well, you need a book. I need a book. Yeah, you need a book. As a speaker, you need a book. I haven't got a book. They said, right, you need to get a book. So I thought, I better set that as a goal and a challenge. So I set myself a goal a couple of years ago to write my own autobiography. And so I did it. I got a coach, like an elite athlete, like a business. I got a coach because I was way out of my comfort zone, didn't know what I was doing. And now I have written my own book. I have it here and it's aptly named. Do you know what? I didn't know what to put as a title. And I did a competition. And in the end, a lot of people said, Steve, why don't you just call it Don't Lean on Your Excuses? And I went, oh yeah, that's a really good title. So it definitely is my phrase. I should really copyright it, I guess, or something, trademark it. But yes, the book is called Don't Lean on Your Excuses. And I'm so proud of this, not only because of the time and effort, but it's my story. It's out there. When I'm speaking like on this podcast or on the stage, there's not enough time. There's never enough time. It's only 45 minutes or half an hour. The book's got everything in. And that's what I want to do. I want to share my story, warts and all, the highs and lows, so that people can read it, appreciate it, and it will inspire. It will change their life by reading it. And it's my book as well, so I can do what I want. So it's got tunes in there, it's got poetry in there, it's got photos in there, it's got thoughts and feelings, diary entries. It's really, really interesting, and that splits the book out. So it's a real love of mine. I'm so glad that I did it. But yes, that's another place that I've used the phrase "Don't lean on your excuses."
It's interesting what you were talking about with your battle with the Italian and the World Championship success, and then again the book, how you used some support. Obviously, you talked about the marginal gains approach, really, didn't you? You looked at the little 0.1s in order to get better. How is it that you what sort of support did you access as an athlete?
I think a lot of support as I could, from family, from friends where possible, a coach where possible, but a lot of it I did myself. In my book, I thank a lot of people for my journey, hospital staff, nurses, friends, family, etc. The biggest person that I thank is myself, because I did most of the work. I was the one that set my alarm early in the morning. I was the one that set my agenda. The coaches, they helped me a little bit. To be honest, it didn't help me completely because my life was all over the place with work and trying to shove time elements in that I did a lot of it myself. But even up to the point of before the race, when you're really nervous, and how do you calm yourself down? I came up with this method. And it's not, much as I came up with it, it's not a new invention or anything, but I used to find myself a park nearby to the start line, maybe a couple of 10 minutes walk away, and I'd do some exercises to make me feel good. I'd do some yoga, I put some music on, a bit of Tai Chi, which is really nice, made me feel in a really positive place because, instead of being nervous about the race coming up, I would then sit down in a yoga pose and just do some visualization about the event, about the race. But the visualization, for anybody who hasn't done it before, visualization is when you do it, you take yourself to the whole race, but in minute detail. So I would visualize myself putting the goggles on, the wetsuit on, lowering myself into the water, listening to my heart beat as I'm waiting for the horn to go off. As soon as the horn goes off, I can visualize myself going through the water. But the thing is, when you do a visualization, everything is perfect. Everything. So I didn't get punched. I didn't get kicked in the swim. I did the swim. I was swimming like a fish. It was amazing. I'd come out of the swim. I'd grab my bike and I'd set off on the bike and I could feel the wind going through my hair on the bike. But again, everything is perfect. The chain doesn't fall off. You don't get a puncture. You don't go wrong. You brake at the corners. You come off the bike. You wrap the bike. You're on the run section with your trainers on. And again, you can feel the sweat. You can feel your lungs. You can feel your heart beating. But everything's perfect. You can see yourself, feel yourself overtaking people. Winding, you can see the finish line and crossing that finish line and punch in the air and triumph. And just having that immense euphoria that everything was perfect. That's when I would open my eyes and I'd go, wow, that was such a rush. That was awesome. And I'd be smiling and I'd grab my bag and I'd go down to the start line, almost skipping. And people would go, Steve, are you okay? Why are you smiling? What's going on? I said, I've just done the race. And it was awesome. And they go, what do you mean you've just done the race? I go, well, I just visualized it. It was amazing. I want to do it again. I really want to do it. And everybody else is really nervous and they're looking at me smiling. And that makes them even more nervous, my competitors, which is great. So, it's about doing that visualization, putting yourself in a good place. But I'd use that as an elite athlete, but I use that a lot now. If I'm driving towards doing a big gig as a motivational speaker, yeah, there's a little bit of nerves there. You're going to be on a stage. You're going to be performing in front of people. Is the tech going to work? Are you going to get there on time? What's the traffic going to be like? There's lots of things that make you nervous. And you start thinking about all those negative things. So what I do is I do the visualization. I start thinking about the positive. Do you know what? I will get there on time. The technology, it will work. It will be perfect. The stage will be fine. The mic will work. They will laugh at the right times. They will cry at the right time. They will clap at the end. I will even get a standing ovation. And it sounds like I'm being big-headed, but why not? Why put negative thoughts in your head? If you have a choice of negative and positive, why not put the positive thoughts in your head? Whatever will be, will be. But you may as well not think about the negative before it's even happened. So that's what I do a lot. I do a visualization every single morning now about my day ahead and even about my future goals because it helps me. And also seeing the visualization, seeing the positivity makes me every single day open my eyes and go, wow, I'm smiling. And I think, yeah, I want that. I want that. What do I need to do to get me there, to reach my visualization? And it's a positive thing that I do myself, and I definitely recommend other people to do it as well.
That's really inspiring. I know certainly that when I'm working with athletes and different clients, visualization is one of the key strategies I try to get over to them. It's like you say, we're wired to think about the negatives. Again, we spoke off air about that before, didn't we? Your experience at the weekend.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like a golfer or a football player who has a great game. At the end of the match or the end of the round of golf, they'll just think about that negative thing, that one bad shot or that missed opportunity.
It's hard. It's horrible when your brain does that. Oh, it's protecting you, I know, but it doesn't need to. I prefer just to remember all the positives. But the things that you can do before the event is you can bring them out. You can bring the negative thoughts and feelings out. It's called negative meditation. You literally sit down, you think about all the things that could go wrong. Go and bring it out. What else could go? What else could go wrong? What else could go wrong? Write those things down. Get those sorted out. If you're scared about arriving there on time, then go and make sure that your car is serviced, filled with petrol. Check out the traffic. Check out Google Earth. Make sure you're going to get there. Get there the day early, an hour early, 2 hours early. What else is worrying me? Okay, I don't know about the technology. Well, let's arrive the day early and check out the technology. There's lots of things that you can do. So you do those, but you do those through negative meditation. And it sounds like a bit of a backwards thing, but as long as you're doing it in a controlled environment, that's the key. And that's the same with athletes. If they're concerned about certain aspects, certain muscle groups or anything, right, let's work on those. Let's have a massage session. Let's have a training session on those. Let's get some information. Let's go and ask some advice. Then we can stop worrying about it and move on. It's about accepting those thoughts and then doing something about them rather than just burying. Of course you can bury them deep and lock them up, but they're still there. and they will never go away until you address them. So let's get them sorted out, take action.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Being very honest with yourself ultimately is the key thing in all this, and obviously taking the time to reflect as well on how you're going to get from point A to point B is really important. So from our conversation, Steve, what would you say are the 3 big takeaways for the listeners?
Oh, there's lots, and I've talked a lot about mental health and everything, but I think I'm very passionate about the goal setting, and I think a lot of your listeners will possibly be in the sports field. So setting goals and working towards them. So a lot of people ask me, how do you do that? So there's 3 principles I would say if you want to achieve, and that's what my why is to help people kind of experience the happiness and fulfillment of achieving their true life goals. So how do you achieve your true life goals? And that's different for everybody. It might be sport, it might be love, it might be educational, it might be money orientated. So how do you find out what that is? The first thing you've got to do is visualization. Get a vision. What is it that you want? Find out what your why is. What is it that what makes you happy? What is your goal? What is your opportunity? What is your love? What is your desire, your dream? As I would call it, this is how you find your gold. You've got to find out what your vision is. So find out what that is. That's the first thing you've got to do. Second thing, once you found out what that is, benchmark it. You've got to benchmark it as soon as possible. I mentioned about that with getting my legs straight. If you want to lose weight, weigh yourself today, and then you can start losing weight. If you want to get faster, how fast are you now? If you want to earn more money, what's your bank account reading now, today? Benchmark it, then you can start recording your progress. Now, the third thing that you've got to do after you've done the vision and the benchmarking is take action. Of course, you've got to take action. You can't be all talk. You've got to start doing something. And all of these expand out, of course, to do. But you've got to start thinking about what you can do rather than what you can't do. What are you going to do to increase that benchmark, to get that benchmark moving? What action are you going to take today? And sometimes action can be doing research. Absolutely. Sit down in front of the computer and start doing some research. That is taking action. But eventually you're going to have to do something a bit more physical than that, I'm thinking. So make a plan for that. But when I talk about the plan, that's going off another one. The 3 ones are vision, benchmarking, and action.
I like it. So vision, benchmarking, and action.
Do it.
Yeah, that, like you say, that the why is so important, isn't it, to really feed that intrinsic motivation?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people always say, how do you stay motivated? How do I stay motivated? And it's all... I do quotes every morning at the moment on Facebook Live at 7:00 in the morning. Nearly every single one of those quotes, whether it's about resilience or goal setting or anything, it all comes back to your why, your vision. What are you doing this for? If you're at rock bottom, if you're in a low place, the thing that's going to bring you out of it is generally your vision. If you're struggling, your vision will pull you through this. How do I stay motivated? Well, remind yourself of what your vision is. Get a vision board. Do the visualization. Remember why you started this. That will help you not to stop it. Looking at your benchmark is really good. You can see yourself progress better and better and better. That's really good. That releases endorphins in you and makes you want to do it even more. There's going to be highs and lows, of course there are, but if you have a general increase, then that's a really good thing. Working towards your goals. So remind yourself all the time of your vision, your benchmarking, and keep taking action.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Because I think goal setting, a lot of people do it, but they don't do it properly. They don't necessarily measure it. Some of the goals they set themselves can actually work the wrong way and affect their confidence and their motivation negatively. So yeah, definitely thank you for sharing your inspirational story there and about how you go about things and the success that you've achieved there.
Yeah, and it's I've talked about my rehabilitation, the elite athlete. I'm now doing that in my business. I want to inspire thousands, if not millions of people. How do I do that? Standing on stage is one thing, great. Writing a book is another thing. What more can I do? Workshops, I'm doing workshops now on the wave of resilience, online workshops. Of course, we've got to look at online workshops because we've got in lockdown. So always thinking about what more I can do to achieve my goal. So as a professional speaker, that's what I'm doing. I'm now president of Yorkshire Professional Speaking Association. Again, that's to help people to share their story. I believe that every single person's got a story inside them. And if they want to share that, I want to be able to help them do that with presentation skills, being a professional speaker. There's so much that I didn't know about that. I thought you just spoke. No. There's so much more. There's like stagecraft, there's voice, there's props, there's acting, there's comedy. You've got to get engagement. You've got to get interaction. You've got to make people, help people remember your messages. If it becomes memorable, then they're going to hold on to it, and you're going to help them even more. Otherwise, they'll listen to you and then they'll leave. But if they actually feel what you're talking about, then that's when you really, you know that you've got something there. And that's the difference between a professional speaker and somebody else. So doing all of that, using my goal setting in my business, I love doing that as well, and helping others.
That makes sense. That does, connecting with the emotion there.
Yeah. So
where can people find you, Steve?
Oh, okay. They can find me anywhere. So I'm on social media, all over the place. I was going to say a bit like a virus, but I don't think that's probably the best thing to say at the moment. So I'm all over social media. So that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. By all means, follow me. Don't follow me home. That's stalking. But just follow me on social media. Do that. And then I've got a website, www.steve-judge.co.uk. There really are no excuses, so don't lean on them.
Get that little catch line in again. I like it. That's great chatting, Steve. Thanks a lot for your time and for sharing that inspirational story.
No problem. Really enjoyed it, David. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll agree from that conversation with Steve, his journey is very, very powerful, and he's got so much enthusiasm in his voice as he talks about that story. Big thanks to Steve for sharing so many tips and bits of advice for people. And just remember, don't lean on your excuses. I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsors, Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Thank you for listening to Demystifying Mental Toughness today. To sign up for tips and advice to help you be the best that you can be, go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk and sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter.